Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, wondering where things went wrong with your children? Maybe you raised them with all the love, patience and sacrifice in the world, and yet now you're met with coldness, guilt-tripping, or even silence. If that's hit close to home, you're not alone. In fact, you'd be surprised how many loving, hard-working parents in their 60s or 70s find themselves mistreated by the very people they once cradled in their arms. Now, I know this might not be easy to hear, but sometimes, and I say this with compassion, the problem isn't you, it's them. The truth is, just because someone is your child doesn't mean they have the right to hurt you. Love should never come wrapped in shame, manipulation, or disrespect. That's why, in this video, we're going to talk about something most people are afraid to say out loud. There are certain things your adult children should never say to you, and if they do, not once in the heat of emotion, but repeatedly and with no remorse, it may be time to walk away. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Because here's the truth, there is no age limit on dignity. You deserve peace, you deserve love. And if someone, even your own child, becomes a source of constant pain in your life, then choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Let's talk about the first red flag. If your child says something like, "You were a bad parent." Now, of course, no parent is perfect. We've all made mistakes. Maybe we worked too much, maybe we didn't say enough. Maybe we simply didn't know better. But there's a world of difference between having an honest, respectful conversation about the past and using your imperfections as weapons against you. When an adult child throws words like that at you, especially after you've given your life for them, they're not trying to heal, they're trying to control. It's a form of emotional punishment. And the more you tolerate it, the more it becomes their excuse to treat you however they like. No one has the right to define your entire life by a few flaws, especially not someone who once depended on you for everything. If they truly felt hurt, they'd speak with love, not cruelty. If they cared about your relationship, they'd want to rebuild, not tear down. And if all they do is remind you of your mistakes without recognizing your love, your sacrifices, your efforts, then maybe it's not about healing. Maybe it's about power. And that's not a relationship, that's emotional blackmail. The second thing to watch out for is this one. You're a burden. These are words no parent should ever have to hear, especially not from the very child they stayed up nights caring for when they were sick, held through their tantrums, paid college fees for, or gave up dreams to support. And yet, far too many seniors today are made to feel like they're just in the way, like they're an inconvenience. They're told, subtly or directly, that they're too much, too needy, or that their presence is draining. Let me say this clearly. You are not a burden. You are a blessing. You have a life's worth of wisdom, experience and love, and anyone who makes you feel like you're just baggage is someone who doesn't understand the meaning of family. It is heartbreaking when your own flesh and blood treat you like a task to check off a list. But if they speak to you like that, with contempt, impatience or shame, it's okay to step back. In fact, you must, because that kind of talk chips away at your spirit. Respect goes both ways. You raised them, clothed them, fed them, and gave them the foundation for everything they have today. The least they owe you is kindness. Now, I know this isn't easy, especially for those of you who come from generations where family was everything, where parents sacrificed without complaint, and children were expected to show honor in return. But we live in a time now where values are changing, and sometimes not for the better. You may be thinking, maybe they're just stressed, or, I don't want to cause drama. But let me ask you this. How many times have you silenced your pain for the sake of peace? And has it ever truly brought you peace? If anything, each time you allow disrespect, it teaches them it's okay to keep going. It sets a pattern, and over time it becomes your new normal. But that's not the life you deserve. Let's go on to something even more subtle, but just as damaging. Sometimes the hurt doesn't come in the form of yelling or insults. It comes in the form of absence, of silence, of hearing something like, "I'm too busy for you." Maybe they used to call once a week, now it's once a month, then once a season. Maybe you leave voicemails they don't return, or you only hear from them when they need something, and when you finally do speak, it's rushed, like they're doing you a favor. Let me be clear, no one, not a child, not a spouse, not a friend, is ever too busy for someone they love. We all have full schedules, jobs, kids, and responsibilities, but love finds a way. Love makes time. If your child consistently tells you they're too busy while they're out with friends, posting vacations on social media, and binge-watching Netflix, then what they're really saying is, you're not a priority, and that's not okay. Now, of course, life gets hectic. We don't expect hour-long phone calls every day, but a message, a check-in, a short visit, these are not luxuries. They're basic signs of love and respect. And if those are missing, if you're always the one reaching out, if you constantly feel like you're begging for attention, it's time to take a hard look at that relationship, because your time, your presence, your heart, they're not disposable. And maybe, just maybe, stepping back is the very thing that will help them realize how much they've taken for granted. You see, sometimes when we hold on too tight to people who hurt us, we rob them of the chance to grow, and we rob ourselves of peace. You've spent a lifetime giving. Now is the time to choose peace over pain. There's something that happens to a parent when they realize the love they gave so freely is being used against them. It's not just sadness. It's a deep, aching kind of grief. The kind you feel not because someone is gone, but because someone is still there, just not as they used to be. And yet here's the hardest part. Many parents blame themselves. You might ask yourself, did I spoil them too much, or was I too soft? But let's be honest. You gave them love. You gave them values. You gave them chances. What they choose to do with that isn't on you. So, when your adult child turns around and says something like, "You owe me," it's time to pause. Owe them for what? You brought them into this world not as a contract, but from love. You fed them, clothed them, sacrificed your sleep, your dreams, even your body for them. You skipped vacations, took second jobs, said no to yourself so you could say yes to them. What more could you possibly owe? This belief that parents somehow have a debt to repay for simply raising their kids is a dangerous lie that's crept into too many hearts. It shows a sense of entitlement, not gratitude. And when someone feels entitled to your time, your money, your presence, without giving anything in return, that's not family, that's exploitation. You are not an ATM. You are not a permanent emotional punching bag. And when your child begins using guilt as a currency to get what they want, whether it's help with rent, babysitting their kids without asking, or giving up your plans for theirs, it's okay to say no, not out of spite, but out of love. Love for yourself, because love without boundaries isn't love, it's self-erasure. Another one that stings, sometimes even more than the others, is when you hear something like, "You're too old to understand." Now that one, let's talk about. If you've ever been brushed off because of your age, like your opinion doesn't matter anymore, I want you to know right now that it's not okay. You didn't live 6, 7, 8 decades on this earth just to be treated like a child by your child. You've seen things they haven't, survived things they can't even imagine. You've buried loved ones, navigated wars and recessions, raised kids without the internet or convenience, and somehow still got through it all. Your perspective doesn't become less valuable with time, it becomes more valuable. So, when someone, especially your own child, uses your age to dismiss you, it reveals a deeper truth. They don't respect your wisdom, they don't see your voice as something to learn from, only something to tolerate. And that hurts. I know, because when we reach this chapter of life, we don't need control or power. We just want connection. We want to be heard. We want to know we still matter. So, if your child constantly cuts you off, rolls their eyes when you speak, or talks to you like you're out of touch, you have every right to step back, because respect is not a favor, it's a requirement. Now, there's another one that might seem small at first, but it eats away at your peace, like a slow drip. Why do you always make everything about you? Maybe you shared something that hurt you, and instead of compassion you were told, you were making it about yourself. Maybe you voiced how lonely you felt, or how hurt you were when they forgot your birthday, and suddenly you're the problem for even bringing it up. Sound familiar? That's what's called emotional deflection. It's a way for someone to avoid responsibility by making you feel guilty for speaking up. But here's the thing, your feelings matter too. Just because you're a parent doesn't mean you stop being a human being. You're allowed to express hurt. You're allowed to say, that bothered me, or I wish you had handled that differently. And any relationship, especially one between a parent and child, should have room for honest, loving dialogue. If your child shuts that down by saying you're making it about you, they're silencing you. And silence is where love goes to die. A healthy child doesn't fear your feelings. They welcome them. They listen not to defend, but to understand, because families are meant to grow together, not gaslight one another. And maybe you're thinking now about all the times you stayed quiet just to keep the peace. But let me ask you, has that silence ever brought you the peace you hoped for? Or has it only taught them that they can ignore your needs without consequence? You deserve to be heard too. And that brings me to another phrase you may have heard, one that comes in different forms but always carries the same message. You're lucky I still talk to you. That's not a conversation. That's a threat, and threats don't belong in families. When someone says this, they're putting a price on their love. They're saying, you must earn my attention, you must buy my affection, you must never make mistakes, or else I'll take my presence away. That's not love, that's control. And it's heartbreaking, because the bond between a parent and child should never be transactional. It should be rooted in history, in trust, in forgiveness. You're not lucky they talk to you. They're lucky they still have a parent who wants to talk at all. Many people out there would give anything to have 5 more minutes with a parent they've lost. And yet, here are some who weaponize communication, turning it into punishment, not connection. If your child speaks to you this way, it may be time to stand up, not out of pride, but out of clarity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who treat your heart like it's optional. And yes, that might include your own child. When you've given so much of yourself to someone, decades of love, care, time and trust, it can be hard to accept when they turn around and act like you're disposable. And yet, that's exactly what happens when a child says something like, I don't need you anymore. Maybe they don't say it outright. Maybe it comes out as subtle coldness. The cancelled visits, the unanswered calls, the forgotten birthdays. Maybe they only show up when they want something, then disappear again, as if you're just a tool to be used and set aside. That's the kind of emotional abandonment that cuts deep, not because you're needy, but because you're human. We all want to feel needed. We all want to feel like we still have a place, especially in the hearts of those we've sacrificed so much for. But when someone tells you, I don't need you, or acts like they don't, what they're really saying is, you're no longer useful to me. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But you know what? Maybe they're right. Maybe they don't need you. But that doesn't mean you don't matter. You still matter. You matter as a person, as a parent, as someone who has lived, loved and given more than they ever received in return. And if someone, even your child, refuses to see your value unless it benefits them, that is not love. That is convenience. You were never meant to be anyone's convenience. Which brings us to one last thing, one final phrase that should never ever be ignored. I wish you weren't my parent. There it is. The most painful sentence a mother or father could ever hear. It may come during a heated argument, thrown like a dagger, or maybe said coldly, deliberately, to hurt. And yes, maybe they're angry, maybe they're going through something, but even so, there are lines that should never be crossed, because words have weight. And when someone says something that cruel, what they're really doing is cutting away the roots of your relationship. After everything, the sleepless nights, the worry, the prayers, the sacrifices they'll never fully understand, to hear those words is like being told, none of it mattered. But it did matter. It still does. You mattered. And you don't have to tolerate that kind of cruelty just because you share blood. Let me say that again for anyone who's still struggling with guilt or doubt, or the voice in their head that says, "But I'm the parent, I should keep trying." You don't have to tolerate abuse, disrespect, or emotional neglect from anyone, not even your own children. There comes a time when the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and sometimes even for them, is to walk away. Not out of anger, not to get back at them, but to protect your own heart, your peace, your remaining years, because these years are precious. You've already spent decades giving. Now it's time to receive. You deserve relationships that lift you up, that make you feel safe, that remind you that you are loved, not for what you can do, but simply for who you are. So, if your child has said one, two, or all of these things, not just once but repeatedly over months or years, and they refuse to acknowledge the damage or change their behavior, it's okay to take a step back. You can love someone from a distance. You can pray for them, hope for their healing, and still choose not to let them back into the front row of your life, because your front row, it should be filled with people who clap when you rise, who wipe your tears when you fall, who respect your boundaries, your time, and your soul. And if your own child can't do that, then maybe the most radical form of self-love you can give yourself is to say, no more. No more silence, no more excuses, no more shrinking yourself to keep the peace. You've earned the right to be at peace. You've earned the right to be loved in return. And if you're feeling alone in all of this, please remember, you're not. There are countless parents out there who are going through the same thing. The pain of estrangement, the confusion of role reversal, the longing for kindness. So, if this video spoke to you, if even one sentence made your heart nod in quiet agreement, I want to invite you to do one simple thing: share your experience in the comments, because your story could help someone else realize they're not crazy, not overreacting, not alone. If you found strength in this message today, give it a like, subscribe to my channel for more heart-centered conversations that honor your wisdom, your experiences, and your worth. This channel isn't just about growing older, it's about growing stronger. And always remember this: you are not here to be tolerated. You are here to be treasured. Here's to living your best life at any age.